The drive home from work on a standard Tuesday evening in Middle America is rarely a time of grand financial inspiration. It is usually a time of quiet mental accounting. You grip the steering wheel, listen to the low hum of the highway, and mentally calculate exactly how many days are left until the next payroll deposit hits the checking account. The sudden, urgent desire to accumulate $10,000 in cash is almost never born out of a motivational podcast or a sudden burst of entrepreneurial zeal. It is usually born out of a quiet, creeping anxiety. It is the realization that the engine of your daily life is running without any oil, nearing a total breakdown. One major medical deductible, or one transmission failure on your vehicle, or one unannounced corporate layoff separates your current normalcy from a state of absolute and total financial chaos. The pursuit of $10,000 is not about getting rich. It is about buying a firewall between yourself and disaster. But the moment you decide to capture this money quickly, you run headfirst into a cultural machine that fundamentally misunderstands the way that money actually works in reality. There is a pervasive, deeply flawed belief woven into the fabric of American financial advice. It is the assumption that wealth accumulation is purely a test of moral character and daily discipline. The narrative suggests that if you simply want it badly enough, you can squeeze $10,000 out of your existing lifestyle by denying pleasures. You are told to stop buying coffee, to cancel streaming services, and pack lunch. This belief feels incredibly true because it offers the illusion of absolute control. It feels empowering to think your financial salvation is just a few choices away, but when we dismantle this idea using basic arithmetic, it falls apart instantly. Willpower is a rapidly depleting resource, strong on Monday, but gone by Thursday. If your strategy for capturing $10,000 relies on making perfect choices 3 times a day, every day for a year, you are mathematically doomed. To save $10,000 in a single year, you must permanently extract over $833 from your life every single month. You cannot find $800 in the margins of your grocery bill. You cannot find it by turning down the thermostat. Those are microscopic adjustments applied to a macroscopic problem. To move that much capital quickly, you have to confront the immovable structural pillars of your life, not your daily habits. Money operates on a strict, emotionless order of operations. It is governed by structural constraints, not by your intentions. The heaviest constraints on your ability to save are fixed costs. These are the costs you agreed to many years ago. You sign a lease for an apartment consuming 40% pay, or you finance a vehicle requiring a $600 payment. You're building a rigid financial architecture that dictates your future. You cannot out-budget a fundamentally flawed baseline. If you are currently carrying $10,000 in revolving credit card debt at 24% interest, attempting to stockpile cash in a savings account is mathematically destructive. The interest accumulating on the debt will outpace your savings so aggressively that you will essentially be moving backward while feeling like you are making progress. The first structural trade-off is acknowledging that eliminating toxic debt is the exact same thing as saving money. But beyond debt, you have to look at the primary arteries of your cash flow. Effort alone cannot override a low-income ceiling or a massive housing burden. If you want to save $800 a month, you must act. You must radically reduce the massive fixed pillars of your life, or you must fundamentally alter the volume of money flowing into the system. There are no secret loopholes to bypass these harsh financial realities. Let us look at a realistic baseline to understand these trade-offs. Consider a person earning a median salary of $65,000. After federal taxes, state taxes, and mandatory health care premiums are deducted. Retirement contributions are also taken out directly by the employer. The actual take-home pay landing in the bank is $4,000. Rent and basic utilities in a suburban area consume $1,800. A financed car and mandatory insurance take another $600. More than half of the monthly liquidity is instantly vaporized. This happens before a single meal has even been purchased. If groceries, household supplies, and fuel require another $800, the remaining buffer shrinks to a highly vulnerable $800. If the goal is to extract over $800 a month to reach $10,000 in a year, the math is instantly broken. You are demanding more from the system than the system can provide. There is no amount of generic budgeting advice that will magically extract $800 from an $800 remainder while still allowing you to live a functioning adult life. The trade-off becomes violently clear in this broken financial equation. You cannot simply tweak this system, you have to structurally break it. You have to rebuild it from the ground up. You would have to sell the financed vehicle and replace it. Buy a reliable older car with cash to reclaim your income, instantly reclaiming that $600 monthly obligation. Or you would have to shatter the comfort of living alone. Take on a roommate to halve the $1,800 housing cost. These are not tips, they are structural severances. The mechanics of executing these changes shift drastically. It all depends on your age and your income level. When you are 24 years old and working in an entry-level position earning $40,000 a year, the strategy is almost exclusively defensive. It is about keeping your overhead artificially low, living with multiple roommates, and aggressively avoiding the trap of lifestyle inflation. At that stage, saving requires a willingness to live far below the cultural baseline of your peers. But if you are 35 years old and your income has grown to $90,000, the strategy fundamentally changes. You cannot simply regress to living like a college student anymore. You have a different set of adult obligations and professional expectations. At this higher income stage, the goal is capturing growth margins. Take a 10% annual raise and automatically route it away. Do this before you ever adapt to the new income level. Some aggressive saving strategies simply do not work at the bottom. Being at the bottom of the income ladder is not failure. It is a structural reality, not a personal failure on your part. Progress is dictated by your sequence of choices over time, not just speed. You must survive lower income years without accumulating structural debt. So when higher income years arrive, your excess capital can be retained. Rather than being surrendered to past obligations and high interest debt, what people actually do under the pressure of rapid accumulation is human. They do not follow pristine spreadsheets or perfect financial plans. Instead, they experience profound behavioral fatigue and exhaustion over time. Accumulating $10,000 fast requires sustaining an uncomfortable state of deprivation. This intense focus must be maintained for an extended period of time. One of the most common derailments is decision fatigue regarding food. You can create a perfect plan to cook every meal at home. But on a cold Wednesday evening after a 10-hour shift, combined with a frustrating commute, the friction of cooking feels insurmountable. People surrender to the convenience of an expensive dinner delivery service. This happens not because they are financially illiterate, but physically exhausted. The reality of rapid savings requires anticipating this exact exhaustion. It requires removing the daily decision-making process entirely. The most successful accumulators do not rely on discipline. Instead, they rely on the power of automated friction. They restructure direct deposits so savings vanish into difficult accounts. This happens automatically before the paycheck even clears. They engineer their environment so the right thing happens automatically. Doing the wrong thing now requires immense effort. Furthermore, people constantly fall victim to the windfall illusion. When a tax refund of $2,000 or a corporate bonus arrives, the immediate psychological response is a desperate desire for relief. The human brain, exhausted by austerity, demands an immediate reward. The money is swiftly spent on a vacation or consumer asset, rationalized as a necessary mental health expense for the soul. But capturing those windfalls in their entirety is a mathematical way to collapse the timeline of saving $10,000 quickly without increasing the daily misery of your tight monthly budget. It requires an adult recognition that the windfall is not a gift. It is not for present boredom, but a tool for future security. There's also a rigid concrete ceiling to the power of frugality. You can optimize grocery trips and negotiate your monthly insurance rates. You can ruthlessly eliminate subscriptions, but eventually, you will hit a floor. Further cuts diminish your basic quality of life to an unsustainable degree. At this point, the only remaining variable is your income generation. The behavioral reality of taking on a second job is physically taxing. Working heavy overtime takes a massive toll on your physical health. Trading your free time for extra money is often the only bridge. This bridge crosses the gap when fixed costs cannot be lowered further. But this must be viewed as a tactical, temporary sprint. It requires clearly defining the exact mathematical endpoint for your labor. Ensure the extra work doesn't become a permanent lifestyle expectation. The least discussed reality of rapid accumulation is the social cost. This quiet social cost is often the most painful part. Spending money is the primary way American adults socialize today. We meet for drinks, attend expensive weddings, and take group vacations. Deciding to save $10,000 requires stepping out of that slipstream. It means saying no to peer-level spending on a regular basis. It means weathering the awkwardness of declining an invitation for financial reasons. The cost does not fit the mathematical architecture of your month. This behavioral isolation is often where the savings plan breaks down. People can endure the cold meals at home, but they deeply struggle to endure the feeling of being left behind by their peers. Acknowledging this social friction before you begin is essential. Recognize that the temporary discomfort of saying no to your friends is the exact price you pay for the permanent comfort of knowing you have a fully funded cash reserve when emergencies arrive. Consider the second-order effects of attempting to execute these changes without first building a proper and stable structural foundation. Imagine someone trying to save this much money purely through emotional willpower, while simultaneously maintaining a luxury apartment and a heavy car loan. For the first 2 months, the sheer novelty of the goal carries them forward. But the pressure inside their financial system builds constantly. The massive fixed costs demand the lion's share of their resources, leaving them with absolutely no margin for error. When an unexpected expense occurs, perhaps a $400 medical bill, the entire psychological scaffolding of their plan collapses. Because they relied on absolute perfection, a single imperfection feels like total failure. The behavioral response is often a massive rebound in spending. A chaotic release of the pent-up deprivation follows this failure. They not only stop saving, but they often accumulate more consumer debt. This helps to soothe the sting of their perceived failure. Framing wealth accumulation as a test of willpower is inherently dangerous. It sets up a binary condition of total success or catastrophic failure. This completely ignores the structural realities of the underlying math. Conversely, look at the second-order effects of genuine structural change. When you trade the expensive finance car for a reliable older model purchased with cash, you do not just save the monthly payment difference. You fundamentally alter the entire risk profile of your daily life. Mandatory insurance premiums drop significantly, freeing up even more of your money. The heavy psychological burden of protecting a pristine, depreciating asset vanishes. The monthly cash flow previously trapped in metal and plastic is liberated to act as a permanent shock absorber for your financial future. When the exact same $400 medical bill arrives, it is no longer a localized crisis. It is merely a minor annoyance, instantly absorbed by newly created liquidity. The relief in that moment does not come from inspirational quotes. The relief comes from the cold, hard mathematics of having significantly more money coming in than going out. The mechanics of the household structure itself also shift dramatically when we look at single-income versus dual-income households. For a single individual, every financial shock is absorbed entirely by one single balance sheet and a solitary income stream. There is absolutely no backup generator for this financial situation. If a severe illness occurs, the household income drops to zero instantly. Therefore, the necessity of the $10,000 buffer is even more acute, yet the mathematical path to acquiring it is vastly steeper because the heavy fixed costs of housing are not shared. The primary structural lever here often involves a radical shift in living arrangements, something many adults deeply resist out of a strong desire for personal independence. But true independence is not living alone while drowning in financial anxiety. True independence is knowing with certainty that you can sustain your life regardless of any external economic turbulence that might occur. For dual-income households, the math is ostensibly easier on paper, but the behavioral traps are twice as complex. The phenomenon of the dual-income trap occurs when a couple slowly scales their fixed costs to require both incomes just to survive their basic daily baseline existence. They buy the larger house that demands both salaries to pay the mortgage every single month. When this structural inflation happens, their ability to save $10,000 fast is completely neutralized, despite their significantly higher gross income, because their actual margin of safety is identical to the single earner in the previous example. For a dual-income household to rapidly accumulate cash, they must make the highly difficult behavioral choice to live entirely on one single income while routing the second income directly into their high-yield savings account. This requires an immense level of constant communication and a shared vision of the future, and a mutual willingness to reject the lifestyle their combined income tells them they rightfully deserve.